Hello, everyone. Welcome to UGA Sports Rumors versus Facts. I am Blaine Gilmer, accompanied by Trent Smallwood, Jed May, the professional one of us with his tagline down there that I forgot to do once again on the deal. I'm sure with our company meeting we got coming up soon, that'll be one of the things that we get chastised for, Jed. Not marketing enough on the taglines there. But guys, how you doing this evening?
You know, someone's got to be professional among this bunch. So,
got to leave it to our national guy.
Yeah, no one makes sense. So,
I mean, you should just go ahead and fill out that bottom. Say, I do the rankings. So.
I should. I should do that for next week.
Rankings master is what it should say under there. Absolutely. Well, guys, we appreciate everybody tuning in here to UGA Sports Rumors versus Facts, the show, the only show that brings you each and every week live recruiting information on Georgia football, and we have a ton of it. This past on Sunday night, actually, we put out a war room that Trent. I mean, I think that's one of the things I'm more proud of during my tenure here of UGA. We give UGA Sports, we put a ton of information in that war room, guys. New official visitors coming, people that are going to be in town for the Scavenger Hunt. Georgia gaining momentum with guys, recruitment's coming to a close. What are some of the things? There was so much in there, but what are a couple of things that stood out to you guys that we dropped this past weekend?
Yeah, I mean, I think we both, me and you, Blaine, we both mentioned KJ Bolden. You talked to him. I saw him at a Buford practice and talked with him a little bit. And I think, if there is a guy. And you could say, okay, Georgia's kind of already broken this Buford curse thing with Jaden Perlotti. But if there's a guy that Georgia's going to break this thing with, it's KJ Bolden, because Georgia's just done everything it can to put himself in a good position with him. And he's going to be on official visit that second weekend of June, along with Buford teammate Edric Houston, who, Trent, you mentioned in your part that Georgia's made up a lot of ground with Edric as well. So you look at those guys, and it's just it seems like Georgia is going to get one of those guys when you look at how this Buford, how that all shakes out. So, look at those guys. Me and you, Blaine, we both talked to Sammy Brown lately. Georgia is setting itself up well there. But yeah, and then it seems like no matter which recruitment you mention, it's all kind of contingent on if and when this big Raiola domino falls. Then that could shake everything up for the rest of the class for the next 6 months or whatever. So, but yeah, that thing was, like you said, it was chock full of information, something to be proud of for sure.
Trent, what stood out to you?
The first thing that stood out was when I had to come in at the end and do my part, and I looked up all the stuff that was written, and y'all had pretty much every prospect in the country covered. So y'all made it easy on me. But I went and sat down with Justin Green on Friday, and he very good kid, 3.7 GPA. His coach just raved about him, says, he's the same, no matter, there's no highs, there's no lows. He's just on that same path. And, excellent football player. The Georgia's want him at the 5 Tech. Trey Scott is the main guy there. He's moved around. He's been in Georgia since he was in 6th grade. And, I do like where Georgia stands, but he was a kid that said, silent commitments is not something that he believes in. He wants to give everybody, wants to stay on that even playing field and then make a decision. After his 4 officials that he has set up in June, Georgia and LSU, Auburn, and South Carolina, and he plans on announcing the decision in July or August. One thing he did say, I asked him if any other schools besides them 4 could possibly get an official visit or was coming after him hard. And he said Florida was a school that was coming after him hard, but he just wasn't sure about them at this time. So,
yeah, absolutely. There was, at every position, offense, defense, it was loaded with information that we had on there. So you definitely wanted to, update you guys with that information, and we'll get into it a little bit here. Right off the top, some guys that we kind of, hit on in that you already mentioned, Sammy Brown and KJ Bolden. Jed, those are 2 recruitments that, regardless of, what's going to go on here, these recruitments aren't making it past July. Both of those guys are going to make a commitment to the school of their choice. Now there's still, with Sammy there, he's got his 5 officials out there. It seems like Georgia and Clemson are really, kind of separating themselves from the rest of the pack of Tennessee, Oklahoma, and Ohio State. But a decision is going to be made by him early in July. He told me, right after those official visits are concluded. Of course, the order of those is interesting. Tennessee's kind of turned into an official visit just because an event they're having at the end of May here. So why not, have Tennessee pay for the visit, right, as being an official. Clemson, the first weekend, because Clemson's doing this weird thing where they basically only have one real weekend of official visitors up there. So he's going there for the first weekend in June. And then the 9th to the 11th, Sammy will be in Athens. And I don't know, Trent. I mean, I feel like there's different ways to look at it. You can look at, well, you're not getting the first one, but I think having the chance to kind of, counter Clemson with having the official visit weekend, the weekend after them, and especially him coming in with guys like Ryan Puglisi that's already committed to Georgia, and KJ Bolden and Sokovie White that are all going to be there in that official visit weekend could bode well for Georgia.
Yeah, and I don't necessarily think the order matters. I mean, he's seen Georgia, he's seen Clemson so many times that I don't necessarily think that it might be better to have the last visit with this one. But yeah, I don't think the order necessarily matters. I do think you're going to have I guess lesser people at that one, that you can kind of focus your attention more on Sammy that weekend.
It's pretty loaded still. Like
yeah,
I said,
it's got a lot of guys still.
It's not what that first weekend was.
Right. So yeah, I mean, I don't think the order matters, but I do think I do like Georgia going into the official visits. And coming out of the officials, we'll see. But I do think Clemson and I guess Tennessee, those teams have some ground to make up, and then Georgia can kind of offset that following those 2 visits.
Jed, we've talked a lot about, those 2 guys being state of Georgia guys, Sammy and KJ, and the fact that I think they're going to be, they're going to be committing around the same time, probably, definitely before the season starts. I would imagine for both of them by the end of July. I mean, that's 2 big in-state dominoes that could fall either for or against Georgia in a short time span. So that's really going to clear up what this class of 2024 looks like on the defensive side of the ball, depending on how those 2 go.
Yeah, and I think Edric Houston is a guy that wants to commit before the season. Christopher Jackson from Tucker, who I saw today, wants to commit before the season. It seems like every guy you talk to wants to get this thing done before the season, even more so. It feels like in recent years. I'm sure there will be the guys who take it down to signing day or thereabouts. But, there's so many guys that want to get this thing done and go into the senior season committed and not have to worry about it. So, but yeah, I mean, if you look at, like you said, that first couple of weeks of July, if Georgia was able to land Sammy Brown and KJ Bolden, 2 of the, top 5 players in the state or whatever, like that would be massive with some of the other dominoes that could and are expected to fall in the coming months as well. I mean, it's that month of July is going to, like you said, Blaine, going to have a huge influence on how this class is going to shake out, whether it's going to be good and great like the recent classes have been, or if it's going to take it that next step to the one of the greatest, possibly the best class Kirby Smart has pulled in, like we think it could be.
Yeah, we reported all these a long time ago. Most of them, especially the ones in May. Casey Poe, Colten Heinrich, Jeremiah Smith, Kam Mikell, all expected to be there taking officials the weekend of that scavenger hunt. So getting those earlier done out of the way. And then, of course, that first weekend in June is the big one. You got Demello Jones. The guys that are in red are the commits. Demello Jones, you got Dylan Raiola coming in, Joseph Phillips, Ryan Wingo, Jarrett Gibson, who we hardly even talked about a whole lot, but he's still planning on taking an official visit. Daniel Calhoun, Justin Green, Marquez Easley, Dylan Stewart, Peyton Woodyard, all those guys coming in that first weekend. That is a just jam-packed first weekend. And then we talked about in the second one here, as you get into things, Ryan Puglisi, Sammy Brown, Sokovie White, Charles Lester III, Malachi Tolliver, Jordan Ross, KJ Bolden, Edric Houston. So, we said that second weekend's not as big as the first one, Trent, but man, when you go down the list, you're like, dadgum, it's loaded with guys on both weekends. So we've got all these lists right here of guys. Jed, we counted it up. I think it was a total of 43 guys that we had that have either confirmed a date or that have told us they're visiting but haven't got their date nailed down yet. Of course, Georgia with 11 commits right now in the deal. So there's a lot of meat on the bone, as I let off the war room with on Sunday evening. And we're going to get into some of these questions here from people on the vault, but this class is going to look radically different in the next 2 to 4 weeks. Yeah,
for sure. Cause you have guys who could decide to pop on or soon after their officials, guys
or at the scavenger hunt weekend.
Yes. Yeah. Scavenger hunt weekend. That's almost, getting skipped over a little bit. It's like you said, and you look ahead, say that first weekend of high school football, the scrimmages and stuff, say August 10th or whatever, the class, like you just mentioned, the class. A lot of the hay might be in the barn by that point, just because so many guys want to get this thing done before the high school season starts. So, this is the meat of this class in terms of putting it together and finalizing it, or it's here, right? The next 2 months are really, what are going to do it for the most part.
It's very weird to be talking about Georgia has 11 commits, could, with these rule changes and everything, could possibly take up to maybe 29, 30 or get close to that number. And you're talking about not 18, 19 open spots, and spots are going to be tight in this class really soon. It's weird to be talking about that, but that's just the way it's going to be, because you're going to see a large number of these players in these positions get very slim, in the next 4 to 6 weeks.
There were a couple of names in this war room that we had last night or on Sunday night that we, brought up that you haven't necessarily heard as much of, but Georgia has been pursuing intently, especially since the point of, offer him. Justin Williams is one of those, Trent, that I spoke about. I talked with him. He's a linebacker, a versatile linebacker from Texas. He's a guy that fits that Georgia mold as, 6'2", 210, 215, can play inside or outside. Said he really enjoys playing Mike because he likes the communication aspect of being able to communicate with everybody on the defense and all that kind of stuff. And it never ceases to amaze the talent that Glenn Schumann can attract, because it wasn't only him, it was also Joseph Phillips, a 4-star out of Alabama as well, that both of those guys are going to be coming over for the scavenger hunt, and Williams all the way out from Texas on an unofficial to do that. So Glenn Schumann, once again, we've already talked about Sammy Brown potentially being in the class. We got Demarcus Riddick, already committed, Georgia does. And now Justin Williams and Joseph Phillips are guys that you have to look at.
Yeah, and just looking at looking at Glenn Schumann's resume. Just the guys that he's put in the NFL, the guys that there wasn't a huge drop off after putting three guys in the in the NFL draft the year before, and those guys are going to go this after this next coming year. So he just continues to load that room up, and he continues to put guys in the NFL. And he's an excellent recruiter. He's an excellent X's and O's guy. And this goes back to me talking to Justin Green the other day, was how he just Schumann and Trey Scott invited him up for a one-on-one film session, and Green talked about how the X's and O's, just how they explain what these positions are doing, and that's what Schumann was at Alabama. He was that X's and O's guy behind the scene, and how he's kind of flourished as a recruiter and a coach on the field. It's just been the proof is in the pudding.
Darren Franklin says Riddick will flip to Bama like McElderry did. Possibly, but I'm everything I've been hearing, even talking to Joseph Phillips, is a guy from Alabama, and I asked him, has he taught much to anybody that is being recruited by Georgia? And he said, yeah, Demarcus Riddick is actually recruiting him to Georgia, wanting him to come with him to Georgia. So, and that was recently. So I don't, our rule, Jed, is you're committed till you're not, right?
Yeah, and listen, he's taken visits to Alabama. He's taken visits to Auburn as well. Blaine, you had him on that list of guys who we don't have a date set for an official yet. But I mean, this summer is Georgia's chance to hold things off. I mean, he hasn't decommitted yet, and
they got to get him on campus.
Yeah, they got to get him back on campus and remind him, hey, this is why you committed to Georgia in the first place. And listen, if Sammy Brown joins the class, then Sammy Brown, of course, will become one of his lead recruiters as well, saying, hey, let's build this thing together. Let's follow in the footsteps of, Smile, Monda, Nakobe Dean, Monty Rice, all these guys. So, like you said, you're committed till you're not, and that goes for Georgia commits, and that goes for guys Georgia's trying to flip, like Chauncey Bowens, Jeremiah Smith, guys like that. So,
and sticking it inside linebacker real quick, just want to point out, Riddick is committed. We talked about Sammy Brown on the official. Justin Williams is coming out for the Scavenger Hunt on an unofficial from Texas and will return for an official. Georgia, Alabama, and Oregon are his top three. Joseph Phillips, I mean, he sounded like he absolutely loved Glenn Schumann talking to him. And I think in Georgia's actually the only official visit he's taken this summer. And then you can't forget about Edwin Spillman, Jed, who is from the Nashville area that he's already visited Georgia this spring. And I think that he'll, he's returning, I think the 23rd to the 25th for an official. So 4 other inside linebacker prospects other than Riddick already have officials set up to come to Georgia.
Well, and more than that, because Chris Cole is going to be an official the 23rd through the 25th. Like you mentioned, Edwin Spillman, Chris Cole is the 16th through the 18th, along with Christopher Jones, another inside linebacker from Virginia that's going to be here through the 16th through 18th after being in Athens for a multi-day unofficial this spring. So there's definitely a lot of guys out there, and I think you look at that pool of names. I mean, there's even a guy, Samarian Robinson, who's a guy committed to Central Florida that was teammates with Raylan Wilson at Lincoln and Tallahassee, has visited Georgia a couple times. So, there's a lot of guys out there that they're keeping tabs on. I would think if Riddick and let's say Brown end up in the class, there's room for one more. Obviously, if Riddick were to decommit and or they miss on Sammy Brown, that opens up some more spots. But there's a lot of guys out. It's not like, it's Riddick and Brown, then they're going to have to scramble to find some replacements. There's a lot of guys out there that the staff likes and that are high on Georgia as well.
Trent, I mean, if Glenn Schumann brings in 3 inside linebackers that will all undoubtedly be talented again after what he's brought in the last 2 classes, I mean, that is just, it's almost unfair.
Yeah, I mean, the guy just continues to bring in guys that he's plug and play guys. You saw it with Smile Munden and Pop come in and sit the first year, and then they're plug and play guys right after you put 3 NFL draft picks in the league. So, he continues to bring guys in. He brought the 3 talented guys in last year, and then if he brings in 3 more this year, that room's going to be crowded. I could see bringing in 2 and maybe a hybrid guy like a Justin Williams who can play both. Can play in those speed rush downs, early in his career. But definitely that room is one of the more talented rooms, in that Georgia football room.
Absolutely. Wanted to give a shout out to everybody that's in here. We got Jeff Hightoff in with us. He's talking about the Jeremiah Smith OV coming up. Rhett Womack is in here from he's working from Statesboro. We appreciate you. Antoine is in with us from Columbus. Randy Payne, as always, from Tifton. We appreciate you tuning in. Randy Hall is in here. Andy Stowe, Tomahawk Dog. We got a lot of you. Darren, of course, has already commented a little bit. You guys continue to drop your comments, converse with each other in the chat. We love that. We'll try to get to some of those, but we're going to get to vault questions right here. And Jed, our first one is from Darth Janus.
Yeah, what timeline would you give for some commitments to be coming in for the Dogs? Any specific weeks you think some recruits will pop?
Yeah, I think there'll be a couple before the end of May, at least 2. Then you're talking about in July. If you were a Vegas, if you were setting over under Trent, would 3.5 in the month of
Over.
July be a good over under?
I don't even think that's a good over under. I think you're going to see 5. With all the names,
Are you including the 2 in May though?
No,
I'm talking about.
I'm talking about just strictly July. Just with all the names that are announcing, the ones that we've talked about, even including Justin Green. I mean, there's a ton of guys that are announcing that has Georgia, in that top 3 or 2, and I just think I think 4.5, and I think I would still go over.
Yeah, I mean, because you got guys that could make decisions. Drew Miller, the punter, he's visiting Georgia. It's been a factor heavily into his decision one way or another. We talked about Sammy Brown and KJ Bolden. They're going to make a decision one way or another, probably in the month of July, definitely before August. Justin Green could make that kind of decision. I mean, there's 4 right there that definitely could see their recruitment coming to an end. And, same thing with Joseph Phillips, I think could end up, making a decision at a certain point. So there's a lot of guys that it could end up. Now, is Georgia going to get all of them? No, nobody bats 1,000, but otherwise nobody else would, be able to compete with Georgia. Oh, wait, they already can't compete with Georgia. They won back-to-back national championships. So we'll see. Jed, we got something from Big Dog here.
Yeah, are we considered a serious contender for the 5-star defensive lineman Jeff Scott out of Illinois? I think that's supposed to be Justin Scott. And what are the chances he ends up in the class?
All right, defensive lineman Jeff Scott. You said that's supposed to be Justin, right? I was reading. Yeah, I was reading. Okay, so, Jed, I mean, you've kind of had your finger on the pulse of that one. Tell us your thoughts on Justin and where things stand right now.
Yeah, I think there was that huge push of momentum because let's flash back to January, he was going to commit. Trey Scott visited him, offered, and he delays his commitment right after Georgia offers. And then he was going to get down for spring practice, an official visit for G-Day, and then it was just going to be G-Day. And now it's been pushed back to an official visit that first weekend in June. So momentum is kind of not stalled. It's just kind of in a holding pattern because the whole reason for delaying the commitment was because he could see Georgia, and that hasn't happened yet. So he's going to get down there, like I said, first weekend in June, and I think that's going to be the big swing. I mean, he's one of the guys. I mean, you talk about how loaded that weekend is. Georgia needs to stock up on that defensive front with guys getting older, like Nazir Stackhouse and Zion Logue. I mean, that's an important position in this 24 class, and Justin Scott's kind of priority number 1. So. Georgia's got a shot. I mean, Notre Dame has been a school that's kind of been the hot team in this thing throughout. So they'll be in it. Ohio State and Michigan involved. Miami has come on strong this spring, but Georgia's going to get a shot at it. They've got as good a shot as anybody. I don't think, I don't think they have fallen off. I just think things have kind of stalled because he hasn't been able to make it down to Athens yet, but he will in a couple weeks, and then we'll have a better idea of where this thing really stands coming out of that OB.
Here's a little something that's interesting from my chat with Justin Green the other day, because this kid is a military kid, and he's straightforward. I'm like, I don't really see you as the recruiting type, even if you were. And I said, is there any prospects that you're talking to? Not necessarily just recruiting them anywhere, just that you keep in touch with. And the first name he said was Aiden Breland, and I was like, seriously. But
and on that, in our that was in our war room, Trent, not that fact, but the fact that Aiden Breland is a guy who is going to, he told me he 100% is going to take an official visit to Georgia. Hasn't quite nailed down the date. It could be May 19th through 21st. It could be the next weekend in May. He's definitely trying to get it done before June, but it could bleed over into June. But Aiden Breland will be on campus for an official visit in Athens this summer.
I was looking at the schools that, kind of have in common, and there's one, in common school between the bunch, and that would be Georgia. So that was interesting to hear him say that that's one of the guys that he talks to the most.
Absolutely. Low Country Dog here on YouTube says, outside of Dylan Raiola, who does Kirby want most in this class? Give me 3 names. Y'all, we'll just do this off the top of our head. If you could say, inject some truth serum into Kirby Smart and he had to give you 3 names other than Dylan Raiola that he would want in this class. What's your opinion of those?
Edric Houston.
That's where
I think that's going to be common among all 3 of us. Edric Houston. Who would your other 2, Trent?
KJ Bolden.
KJ Bolden. Who would your third one be?
I'm going to say either Jeremiah Smith or Wingo, just because of the wide receiver position.
Yeah, Jed. Who would your 3 be?
Guesses. Just to be different, I'll say, Daniel Calhoun would be one, just because we've, talking to prospects, they've said Georgia's expressed how important this offensive line class is. Kirby does love talking about fishing with Sammy Brown, so maybe he wants him in the class to keep that going for the next 3 to 4 years. Trent, I like where you're at with Smith and Wingo, just because one of those two that's that. They've done a good job developing, and there's a lot to be said for that. But those 2 guys with those game-breaking type receivers that also resonate with other recruits, like Ladd McConkey signing with Georgia doesn't necessarily resonate with guys in future classes the way signing a Jeremiah Smith or a Ryan Wingo would. So those guys are pretty good guesses too.
Yeah, and I've said anybody who came up and asked me, I've said let Georgia. Let the country mess up and let Georgia sign some big player wide receivers because what they've done, over the past years with just underrated guys, so that offense, the way they've developed, and they've made it work. They have talented guys. A.D. Mitchell was one of the better receivers in the country, but let them mess up and give them guys like Marvin Harrison Jr. and those type of dudes. That offense is going to go to the next level.
Yeah, I would say for my 3, Edric Houston would definitely be the first one that you would list outside of Dylan Raiola. I would definitely go in the direction you're thinking there, Jed, and either Daniel Calhoun or Brandon Baker, one of those 2 elite tackle prospects. And then it's hard not to say Sammy Brown because he's right there in your backyard, and I think they know what kind of difference he can make. But also, it's hard not to say one of those 5-star wide receivers for all those reasons you listed, Trent. So there's a lot of guys, truthfully. Kirby's a little selfish when it comes to recruiting. I don't think he could limit it to just 3, But as you said, Trent, don't mess up and let it happen. Well, I've got a mutual friend with Mr. Smart that saw him celebrating after the hours of the morning after the TCU game had concluded. And he looked at our mutual friend and said, they messed up. They messed up and let us steal one this year with national championship. So the fact that Georgia really wasn't supposed to be back in that position again, but now with the reloaded talent, that's the same thing that you would kind of say, don't everybody else out there on the recruiting trail better not mess up and let Georgia get one of those elite wide receiver recruits, because you can see the difference it can make. Heck, you saw the difference that it made when George Pickens was healthy in 2021. Just the couple catches that he made, it made a huge difference. So we'll see how all that goes. Now we got to get through some of these questions here. D Franklin 31 says, what positions are you aware that Georgia has some commits that the public is not aware? Well, let's address that first. If you had to say some positions that you felt confident that there's some guys stacked up that are ready to go, what would you say?
I'm pretty sure that gives away with the spots, but
one of them I can't say.
I would say there's a defensive back, maybe.
No, I'd look on the defensive side, or I look on the offensive side for sure.
I think you would be pretty safe to say defensive back, edge, and inside linebacker, all 3 could have one there. Offense, I'm just not going to do it because that's too it's a little obvious. But I think there's at least one guy that you could say definitely coming, but I'm not going to say his position. Then he says, why do you believe Peyton Woodyard and Jalen Hayward will remain committed? Jed, Peyton Woodyard taking official visits elsewhere, but I don't know. I mean, I think that's just a guy enjoying the process because there's not been a more, ardent recruiter for the University of Georgia than Peyton Woodyard.
Yeah, and listen, Ohio State obviously has great defensive back tradition to sell. So does Alabama, and Holman Wiggins at Alabama he's a running backs coach, but has or not running backs coach, receivers coach, has a West Coast connection. So there's something there, but I think it's all going to come down to, at the end of the day, one, relationships with the staff, obviously. But when you're a defensive back and you've got the opportunity to be coached by the defensive back staff that Georgia has, that's a really tough thing to pass up. And I think that goes for both of those guys. Like, there's a reason they committed to Georgia in the first place, is to be developed by the best defensive back coaching staff in the nation. Now, if, Will Muschamp were to leave or Fran Brown were to leave, not that I think that would happen, then that would be something different. But I think as long as those guys are in place, it's going to be tough to leave that group, just for the simple fact that you're not going to get better coaching from more minds anywhere in the country. So they're both going to take, I think Jalen Hayward has an official to Miami lined up as well, as if I'm not mistaken. But I would bet that both of those guys are going to end up signing.
Yeah, I wouldn't bet against Georgia in those. He had a follow-up question. He said, how would you describe Uzo Deribe's recruiting of edge prospects there, Trent? Just in the time that Uzo Deribe has been here, how would you describe his recruiting?
Phenomenal.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know how else he's a rising star in this business. You know, he's very good. He relates very well to the prospects. He stays in contact with prospects continuously. You know, he landed Damon Wilson.
Mapimba.
I mean, you know, he's got Georgia in for guys that most of the time Georgia wouldn't be in for. I mean,
don't forget Gabe Harris too.
Yeah, Gabe Harris. I mean, the guys that he's got Georgia in for. I mean, guys like Colin Simmons and those type of guys. They're just elite guys, and you know, I think he's going to be one of those guys that's going to be hard to keep on staff here in a couple of years, because people are going to be coming after him. But yeah, he's a phenomenal recruiter.
Yeah, I got a little prediction about him. He either won't be at Georgia, or he'll be one of the most highly paid outside linebacker coaches in the country before too long, because the guy is just absolutely stacking him up right and left. And a note on that, I did want to throw this screenshot up here of a Rivals profile of a player that is emerging. Marquise Lightfoot, 4-star out of the Chicago area. You see there's the mold, Jed, 6'4", 225. I mean, that's how all these guys that Uzo Deribe recruits look. And he's a guy that Uzo Deribe recently went up to that area, evaluated him. And when he talked to the staff and stuff like that, a lot of times these coaches will go evaluate and they'll say, hey, we would love to have so-and-so down at camp so we could get closer eyes on him. Well, Uzo Deribe was so impressed with Lightfoot that he said, don't worry about coming to camp. He said, just get to campus for an official visit. They're targeting that humongous weekend, June 2nd through 4th, for an official visit for him. Jed, he's just another guy. The arms are long. He's explosive off the edge. He's also strong enough to set the edge. Just fits that classic mold that Uzo Deribe is going after.
Well, 6'4", 225 is exactly to the number, the measurements that CJ Jackson from Tucker gave me today. So again, it's the same thing. The long guys, the built, you know, the athletic guys that can come off the edge and bend. And listen, I see a comment down here. It says another Nolan Smith. Like, these guys like that comparison. Like, I asked CJ Jackson, hey, that 6'4", 225 sounds a little bit like Nolan Smith to me. And his eyes lit up. And he's like, yeah, man, that's the role model. If I come to Georgia, I try to take parts of his game and all that kind of stuff. So the pedigree is definitely there. It's easy to sell. And that room, especially like what Uzo Deribe did last year, is phenomenal. And, you know, they're going to be looking to bring guys in. I mean, Dylan Stewart fits that mold. You know, there's just all, like you said, Blaine, every guy seems to be in that range. So it's going to be interesting to see, you know, how it shakes out, how the spots shake out, and, you know, all that kind of stuff.
Both of you have used the word phenomenal in the last in the last minute, 90 seconds. And all it does is make me think of AJ Styles, one of my favorite WWE wrestler, a Georgia Bulldog fan, and a guest of Georgia Players Section with myself, Tavares King, and Oshawn Marino. And, always loved the wrestling and stuff. And Big Fatty 94 brought up some wrestling. Bad Bunny, I don't know if y'all are aware of this, but Bad Bunny is a world-renowned, actually the most streamed rapper out there. He's a Spanish rapper. He had a match in WWE Backlash this weekend, and that dude, to not be a guy who does that for a career, it was unbelievable. So I agree with your assessment there, Big Fatty 94. Go ahead, give Bad Bunny the belt, do whatever. That man was awesome this weekend. But next recruit to pop, will it be on the offensive or the defensive side? I think it'll be on the offensive side. And I think it'll be sooner rather than later. So we just got to kind of wait and see on that. But then definitely you're going to have, we know, probably three defensive guys make decisions. Not saying they're all coming to Georgia, but three defensive guys that Georgia's heavily targeting that we've already mentioned are going to be committing in the month of July. So that'll be interesting to see. Helifano says, what is a realistic best case scenario for offensive line recruiting in 2024? Trent, off the top of your head, I mean, he said he qualifies it there. He says best case, but then he also says realistic. So, what are you thinking in terms of that realistic?
I mean, best case is you land Calhoun, Seaton, and Baker all in the same class, and I think that while it seems like it's a little unrealistic,
he said Trent is the Bad Bunny of Georgia. No doubt. That is true.
I'm not answering no more of his text messages when he sends them to me. But yeah, I think that would be your best case.
That was a huge compliment. That was not a bad thing.
Then you got, guys like Parker Westfall, and Jonathan Daniels, and those guys, but best case scenario is you go and land the elite guys, the 5-star and high 4-star guys, but then we are in for a lot of guys that are still in the Rivals 100, Rivals 250. So, what would your realistic offensive line class be, Jed?
Yeah, I definitely think, and obviously Malachi Tolliver would be in this group too. I think any best case scenario, you got to start with Calhoun and Seaton, and then, like you said, probably Brandon Baker. And then when you look more interior, you've got, there's Casey Poe, there's William Satterwhite from Ohio, who Georgia offered on a visit this spring. He'll be back in Athens this summer. We mentioned Marquez Easley. Who's a guy who'll be back for an official. That's another one. So, but yeah, I think the foundation of a best case class will definitely be Calhoun and Seaton, and then from there, different things could happen. You could get Baker and Easley. It could be Westfall and Satter. There's a lot of different ways it could go from there. But yeah, the base two would be Calhoun and Seaton, I think, and then you'd really be off to just I don't think you could classify, no matter what would happen, the class as a failure if you land those two to go along with Malachi Tolliver.
Okay, I would say that the base guys, I agree with you on Calhoun, but I would add Ethan Callaway in on that because I think Ethan Callaway is a guy that can play guard or tackle. So Daniel Calhoun, Ethan Callaway, keep Malachi Tolliver, committed throughout this process because he will take an official to Louisville. We found out, in interviewing him, he is from Louisville. So that is, that is something you got to watch for. Louisville's going to try to flip him. So we'll see about that. And then the guys out there, if you could add some sort of combination to that, if you want to get up to 5, a Brandon Baker and a Casey Poe, I think that would give you every kind of position covered. We haven't talked as much about Walt Claire Flynn, but he's a guy from Grayson that typically doesn't pan out, but he is another guy that you gotta take a look at. But I think the two names you need to look out for the most on offensive line are Daniel Calhoun and Ethan Callaway. I didn't put the person's name on here, but I'm sure they did a great job submitting this question. How many commits do we have bottom line by the end of July? So how many commits, Georgia? Well, we said probably 2 in May. And then
I would say you'd be close to 20 by the 1st of August.
Wow. 18. So you're thinking you're thinking a good seven or 8 guys added. That would be Trent's being ambitious right there, I think. But he's thinking the momentum is got cranked up. It's getting hotter, and Trent says it's gonna get hotter on the trail right here for the Dogs. So Pine Tree One has something for us, Jed. We've already kind of hit on this a little bit, I think.
Yeah, it was a dream inside linebacker class of 2 out of Justin Williams, Demarcus Riddick, and Sammy Brown possible.
Yeah, 100% possible.
Definitely possible, yeah.
So you're telling me there's a chance. All right, Night Dog says, how deep are we, Georgia, with Nigel Smith, D-line edge? He released his top 8 today, including UGA. I know Georgia was in touch with him early, Jed, and obviously offered and have followed up and things like that. I think it's just a question of, hey, as we said, we're already looking at 43 official visitors that are kind of tentatively planned. You only get up to 56. So, that's a long way to come out if it's not going to be an official. So we'll see how that shapes up.
Yeah. And this whole unlimited official visit thing, that doesn't apply to the schools. Like you said, Blaine, it's still 56. And they're at a certain point, even if a guy ends up scheduling an official, like at a certain point, decisions have got to be made if visits need to be canceled. I mean, it happens in classes where visits have to be put off. So, and the thing too is, all these ones that we have written down are in the summer. And of course you want to save some for the season too. Like I know Ellis Robinson is going to take one. His is going to be during the season. You want to save some for the season in case you need them. So, the spots will get tight. Not to say that Nigel Smith won't take an official with Georgia, but
well, anything can happen on live, and I'm going to try to cover up the number here. But Nigel Smith just texted me back while we were on here. I texted him earlier today, and asked him, congratulate him on the top 8. Asked him if he's going to take a visit. Georgia, he said, "Yes, sir. I'd love to take a visit. Just got to figure out the time when." So sounds he doesn't have any official visits. So hey. As Jim Ross said, Andy Stowe, we're live, pal. Anything can happen. So you know what I'm talking about there. But yeah, it's gonna be interesting to see it play out. And Night Dog had a follow-up question here, Trent. It says, what actual positions do Brandon Baker and DeAndre Carter play, left or right tackle, and their future projections? Well, so the whole season, Carter played left tackle, Baker played right tackle, but Trent, I mean, do you think just because that was what they're comfortable with, do you think that's what Georgia will kind of start them off with? I mean, Amarius Mims played exclusively left tackle at Blakely County, and he's really fit in at right tackle at Georgia. So what's your thoughts on that?
I think the one thing about what Georgia does when they bring offensive linemen in is, they cross-train them so much and they find their best position. I think you've seen it in the past with Xavier Truss and even Amarius Mims practice some inside. I mean, you've seen a lot of these guys practice Jamari Salyer. So I think there'll be, they'll bring them in and they'll play them at guard, they'll play them at tackle, see where they fit best. I think, Baker's a guy that can play right tackle. I'm not sure about left tackle, but he definitely can slide in the inside and play a little bit there too. So, I mean, I think that's to be determined, but I like both of those guys. Both of those guys are very talented.
Can't think of a better way to close the show than this from Rob Suggs. Little known fact that Jed is one of Kirby Smart's several lookalikes to keep Coach safe from assassins. This is why you tune into Rumors versus Fact. This is why the chat is hopping over here. So there you heard it first. Not only does Jed control all of Rivals national rankings, but he is a face double for Kirby Smart, because we can't say body double. You can't say body. You're gonna have to be eating some more cheeseburgers and stuff.
I'm probably 5 or 6 inches taller than Kirby is.
I know, but I think the tenure at Georgia has not been good to Kirby's waistline. You know what I'm saying? He's
a lot of in-home visits and dinners, man.
A lot of dinners. He's on the road. He hadn't even got to in-home season yet, so that's going to be Kirby. You know, he said Pollock was on with me and TK and Doshan a couple of weeks ago, and he said Kirby during the pandemic was coming over and playing basketball with him, trying to make sure he stayed in shape and stuff. So you know, we'll see how Kirby's physical fitness plays out over the next couple of years, because now he's got those rings. Carrying those rings around could be just a little extra workout. You know, got multiple.
Yeah. One thing I was going to touch on earlier was the official visits. So y'all were talking about the official visits and the number, unlimited for players, but you know, not for the colleges themselves. And some high school coaches that I talked to said they were encouraging players to take official visits sooner than later, because this is going to be a situation where official visits get canceled on you from the colleges due to limited amount of room, because you only got that 56. So I think a lot of that, you're going to see a lot of June officials more so this year than any time, just because of that new rule change.
Get them early, and that's it for our show tonight, guys. We've covered just about everything we can cover Georgia recruiting wise this week, but make sure you are a member of the UGA Sports Vault, because you get all of this written out, typed out, put in, you know, format for you with player cards, everything else to keep you on top of who's visiting, who's not. Speaking of that 56 number that Trent talked about, we're going to be doing a piece called Getting to 56 for too long, and breaking down what these officials look like and when they're happening and all this kind of stuff. That'll be over at the Vault, and lots more content coming your way. So make sure you are a member at UGAsports.com. Guys, we don't have to put out crazy headlines or you know, throw stuff out all the time to try to draw people in, because we don't get paid for clicks. We get paid for our loyal subscribers over at UGAsports.com. And if you're one of them, you get to submit questions here on Rumors versus Facts, and we make sure to get to them. For Jed May and Trent Smallwood, I am Blaine Gilmer. Make sure to tune in to Coach Donnan and Roddy and Dane tomorrow. Myself, TK, and Noshawn on Wednesday on Georgia Player Section. Hope everybody has a good evening. Hit that like button, subscribe, turn on notifications, and we'll catch you guys next Monday night.